Good afternoon. Hope you're well. Thank you for joining us. Just going to do our usual checks before I get started. As you can see, we've got a spoon in the vise there. I'm just going to check everything's working. Hope you're well. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, that all sounds fine. There we are. Right. Today, what are we looking at? Well, basically, this follows on from a conversation that I was having midweek on Instagram with the carver. Hello, if you're joining us. That's one of his carvings there. He was explaining that he'd found some of the stuff that we do quite useful, especially things like stop cuts, that sort of thing. And it got me thinking how sometimes, we've demonstrated what we do as our day job and stuff like that, but concentrating on those fundamentals is a really important and useful thing. Now, Thomas Woodcarver's working on something over there. I know he was talking about doing a video, and I think he wanted to concentrate on beginners and showing everybody. Who we got joining us? Hello, wood burning warrior. Good morning. Good morning from West Wales. Or it's good afternoon for us here. We're a little bit in front. And he was talking about demonstrating some of the sort of fundamentals and how to really learn wood carving. But anyway, the combination of the different things, it just got me thinking about how we can sort of demonstrate and help anyone who's really at the start of their beginning, but just reinforce those very simple principles that are the basis of the wood carving and woodworking that we do. So I got a little spoon in the vise here. This is the first one that I'm going to demonstrate. And I'm very much going to talk through the basics. So, first thing, safety. We got it clamped in the vise, nice and secure. And we've marked out that wood with a vertical grain. So those are two fundamentals that we would generally do when making our love spoons, is to have that vertical grain and have it secured in the vise. Next thing then, as you can see, I'm just starting to carve out stop cuts. And this is an interesting thing. The stop cuts that we use, that's why we use different curved gouges and different shapes, different sizes, because they've all got a different curve and a different size. You can use those to do all of your stop cuts for you. So if I want to do a bigger circle in the center, I choose a bigger gouge. So you want to do a bigger flower, real sort of basic fundamentals. If I wanted to do a bigger flower, I would just do, I would choose a larger gouge and then cut a larger stop cut. So it's just those little fundamental things. So we've marked out our center like so. And then same sort of thing around that center. The way I do it, because this is the thing, I demonstrate things quickly, and sometimes perhaps I demonstrate too quickly and it doesn't give everyone a chance to see properly what we do. So what I'm going to do is the first carving that we ever teach others how to do. So I'm measuring out, I then angle a gouge over, a couple of taps on the top, and there we go, we've got our stop cut. The same the other side, so I measure it out so I can see it. I angle the gouge over, a couple of taps, and it gives us our stop cut. Same again for this one, angle it over, a couple of taps. Same on this side, angle it over, a couple of taps. So what we're doing, we're just getting those simple stop cuts. And those then, they will be what we use to give depth and detail to our carving. So same again, line it up, measure it out, angle it over, and away you go. Now as mentioned, you can do it this way, so I'm doing the carving freehand. If it was a carving that I wasn't sure about, then you can also do that by marking it on the wood itself. So you can, if I want to do these last petals and mark them out, so you just draw it on there. You basically find whatever method works for yourself. So same again, measure it out, angle it over, a couple of little taps, and you've marked out your stop cuts. Now the reason that we start with this very simple carving is it includes most of the skills required for wood carving. And there's most of the things that can sort of go wrong when you're wood carving can happen when you're doing this simple little carving. So now I've done those stop cuts, all I do, I just cut in to the edge just like so. To explain that a little bit further, what I actually do, the first thing you've got to do, you've got to find the cutting angle of the gouge. So depending on how high or low you have the heel, so if I have the heel too low, I end up where you're skimming across the top. If I have it too high, I'm cutting too deep into the wood. So it's finding the cutting angle and finding an appropriate angle just to cut in to that stop cut. So that's what we're doing. And that is the essence of wood carving. You prepare your stop cut to use, and you use that stop cut as a barrier, and you just cut into that edge. So for those of you, and we've had a few people inquiring as real beginners, those are the simple principles that underpin all of the carving that we do. We also then get asked, you know, about dealing with problems and issues and things like that. So what I can do with this little flower is to also highlight how, regardless of things then going wrong, how we can always find a solution. So I'll finish off this carving for you to see, and then I'll show you, I'll deliberately change things incorrectly, we'll put it that way, so you can see how you can correct the different issues. So again, you're cutting into that stop cut that you've already done. Use it again, cut into the stop cut. So it's all very sort of simple, basic principles. As I mentioned, I've got Thomas the Woodcarver working there. Are there any things that I've missed out there, Did?
I wasn't listening.
Oh, sorry. He wasn't listening. I'm just going through the very basics, the simplest. I know you're going to do a video dedicated to this, but I'm just going through the real simple principles of those stop cuts and finding that cutting angle. You know, if you're too high or too low, you find a good cutting angle to work on.
Did you mention the
safety
angle of the sharpening?
No, I haven't mentioned that one there. Yeah,
I mean that is the important thing about it, because
the sharpening angle you have on the back, ultimately that does dictate the angle that you do.
And what you
cut into the wood.
What we tended to have years ago was a grinding angle and a sharpening angle.
Yeah. So you would actually have two angles on the edge, wouldn't you?
Two sort of angles on there, you know.
Yeah, so you'd see on the back edge, you'd have a grinding angle and then a sharpening angle at a slightly different angle to the grinding angle. So you can see we've just built up that basic shape. This cut for doing the center, what I actually do, I'm going to use the reverse edge. So normally we're cutting in like that, but to do the center, it's a different way you can use a gouge. Use that reverse edge and it just finishes off that center of our flower. And that's why we use, as I said, this carving. That's why we choose it to teach others, because it encompasses a lot of the principles of wood carving, but also you have something tangible, something for the work that you've put in. So you don't have to spend hours and hours and then, you know, frustrations and things like that. It's a simple little carving that you can learn, and you can learn it in next to no time at all, really.
Yeah. The project I was referring to was you'd done 2 key rings.
Yeah.
And what else had you done? Some boxes.
We did some boxes, some key rings, that sort of thing.
And I just, what I'm going to do is to concentrate on the 2 key rings.
Here we are.
And I'm going to make those as simple as possible.
Well, what I'm going to do here now then, what I'm going to do, but that's what will be coming up, is Thomas the Woodcarver demonstrate it. What I'm now going to do, I'm actually going to deliberately change this one just to show you how you can adapt and evolve, because a lot of the carving that you do, you need to adapt and evolve what you're doing. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pop this center bump out like that. And this is something then that happens, especially when you're learning carving, when you're a beginner. People see that then, they pop the center of the flower and it's sort of panic stations. What do I do? So all I would do, if I pop the center of the flower out, I would carve that center deeper into the wood. So we're just going to carve that down just a little bit further into the wood. And then the stop cuts that we've done on the insides of those petals, we're just going to make all of those deeper just to match it back up. So that's why we like this carving, is because it teaches those simple principles. You go back over your stop cuts just to bring them out more clearly, more definite. And there you go. You just go over it. And if you wanted to, you could go deeper again. Now, another thing that can happen on any carving, but on a simple carving like this one here, bump, we pop the petal. So as we've been doing our stop cuts, we pop the petal out. So we've got one petal now that is lower into the wood, and we've lost that definition because it's popped out. And it's something that happens. Or this one there then, we've got a jagged edge on the side there. So what do? We've got a problem in our carving. It's very simple. The first thing that I would actually do, all of the other petals, we will drop them all down to the same level as the one that is broken. So we go over all of these. So we're losing all the detail of our carving now. Flatten those out, just like so. So what I've done, I've dropped, and this is the beauty of working in wood, I've dropped everything down to that level. And it's basically, if you make a mistake, if something goes wrong like this, what can you do about it? You can carve the whole thing deeper into the woods. And what we find with this is that mistakes and things that have gone wrong like that over the years will actually end up creating something more effective. And in this case, you'll have a carving with more depth. And some people, a lot of people, would actually prefer it. So we're just going deeper into that wood, just like so, reinforcing those stop cuts deeper into the woods. And all the time, what we're doing, we are just using the natural curve of the gouges. So for anyone who's starting carving and you're wondering, why do we have such a wide variety of gouges, different shapes and different sizes? A lot of the time, that's what it's to do. They've all got different jobs. And the more variety you have, the more options you've got, the easier, the better choices then you've got to choose from when doing your carving. So that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to go back over all of the stop cuts and all of the detail. And this is the exact way that I learnt to carve myself. What you will notice again with the heel, we actually have quite a high heel when we're cutting down into the wood. That's due to the angle that we've put on our, when we've sharpened it, that's the angle that we put on there. Ultimately, it doesn't make a huge amount of difference, the angle on there, in terms of the finish. You put on an angle that suits yourself. So that's something that you can play around with, is just trying different angles. So there you go. Those are just a few methods you can use, and then a few possible solutions to problems that might occur. So then again, when it comes to working on the bowl, you're just finding that cutting angle and you raise the heel of the tool as you need to, and you find the cutting angle on the tool and just cut into the wood. What we do for the bowls, we start them off using a router and a template. It reduces some of the pushing that we're having to do. I can see, Thomas Woodcarver, you're actually holding there. You're holding a school project, aren't you?
Yeah.
Do
I show this, or do I?
I think you can. No, I think you can show that one there. I think you can show that one there. We were involved with a few different schools doing Lovespoon projects, and what we're going to actually do is to make the winning entry. We're going to choose a winning spoon, and it will be their school Lovespoon then that we will make for them. There we go, so you can see just those simple fundamentals, using the tools, using the wood, and getting the best out of it. There we are. Yeah, have you got some of those designs to show?
Yeah, I mean, I would explain. I guess some of the drawings.
No problem. While you're doing that, I will carry on working on this one. So to demonstrate again, we're working with stop cuts.
Can I put these on there now?
Yeah.
If I put them on sort of one at a time, these...
So these, fantastic really, these are different designs that the children have done. And so they've given us, what we asked them to do was to design something, but also give an explanation of what their designs meant. So great, yeah, they've given us nice information. So you'll see there's a different styles.
And there's different years as well.
Yeah, different age groups. So it was a school-wide competition. So for instance, straight away, a design like this, we would, the things I would like in that is that they've got enough strength. That would be practical. As with this, nice idea with what they've done, but there would be delicate things. If I was going to design it myself, what I would do, a lot of this I would put inside a framework to give it extra strength to protect it. But they've done some fantastic work on it, some different ideas. Really nice.
This is a good idea.
This one here is a quite a unique sort of design. I think we did a spoon where it was in the style of a begging bowl years ago. So I think they may have taken a little inspiration from there, but nice bit of drawing, nice design.
Anybody that's sort of got connections with schools?
Yeah, it's a fantastic school project.
Like that. I mean, that drawing there.
Yeah, there we go. Beautiful bit of drawing on that one there.
You know, so you've got the design that
I like that.
Children can get involved in.
That's a nice bit of work on that one there. I've actually used that particular Celtic knot. I'm going to be using that one on an upcoming video. So that's a nice one there. So yeah, some nice ideas. If we get back now to what we were demonstrating as well, as you can see, I've got another piece of oak. Again, marked it with a vertical grain. And what I'm going to just show you is how those simple principles of wood carving, I'm going to show you how we then apply them to our Lovespoon. So we start off where we know we've got our design, we've got a heart shape, like a contemporary heart. So again, we mark out a stop cut, cutting it down into the wood. Yeah, you were saying as well, it's a good project, isn't it, for a school?
Because obviously resources are expensive.
That's right.
You know, in a school, you know, they have to budget, and so you've got paper and pencils. You can start by, you know, you explain what the Lovespoon is. And
absolutely.
Where it sort of originates.
You've got the history of it, you've got the symbolism with it, and that's what we do. And that's what I'm going to go on to later, because after speaking with the carver, we were talking about how it would be a good idea just to share some of the stories, because it's the stories and messages that inspire the work that we do. With this one then, as you can see, I've done 2 stop cuts, so I'm cutting just down into the woods. The reason that I haven't used a mallet myself is the extra pressure, because of the direction of the grain, it can cause it to split. So that's why I tend to be cautious with using the mallet on those particular stop cuts. So now we've got those stop cuts, again, we find the angle that we want, that cutting angle. So we find that cutting angle on the gouge and we cut in to our stop cuts. Now, as you can see, we've got bits of wood. As you get deeper, you go beyond the stop cut that we've cut down into the woods. So you end up with these little bits left over. And the way we get rid of those, you just go back over the stop cuts, cut in further into the piece of wood, and then cut into that barrier, into that stop cut, to get rid of the pieces of wood left over. And it's as simple as that. Same on the other side, cutting into that stop cut. After you get beyond where you've done that initial cut, you will end up with little pieces of wood that are not coming away. So you just reinforce where you've done that stop cut down into the woods. And again, cutting into the edge, just like so. And you clean up the stop cuts. Back to this side then, and we're just going to bevel that edge ever so slightly. We're just beveling the edge. Same on this side. And this just gives you a rounded off finish, just finishes it nicely. So on the top of here, we're also going to bevel that edge. So again, you find that cutting angle, and as much as you possibly can, you want to be working with the grain. And that's something when you're learning to carve, finding the cutting angle and working with the grain is basically what will help you to progress and ultimately will lead to you being more successful. Different woods then, different grains can have an impact, but if you can work with the grain predominantly, it is a lot easier to do your wood carving. So again, cut down into the woods, doing those stop cuts, just like so. We then use that stop cut as a barrier, cut into where we've marked it out, just like so. Once you go beyond where you cut down into the woods, we don't worry about it too much because we will reinforce that barrier by cutting deeper into the woods, and the little bits of wood that are left over, we just cut them away.
When you finish that one, I'll come in with these two drawings that we've chosen, and I'll explain more about the project.
Yeah. So we're just going to cut that just to bevel that edge, taking off any sharp edges. I put it to the Thomas wood carver because he has over 50 years of experience of wood carving. Anything else you would add to those basic principles of carving?
Well, you're working with the grain.
Yeah.
In the direction of the grain. And
what about as well, one thing you always sort of spoke about is your mindset, your sort of emotional state, put it that way, your emotional state as carving. What sort of mindset should you have when working, when doing your wood carving?
You got me on the hop now.
Well, you always put across to me that, you know, you should be relaxed. You know, you'll have people come in and you'll be teaching them to carve, and you'll see that they're gripping the gouge really tightly and they're stressed and things like that. And you always say that will reflect in the work that you're doing.
Oh, obviously, yes. It is important. I mean, it is a job. It's a job to us, but I mean, what a job to have. It's not. It isn't sort of. I always used to think of our friend next door who's a dentist. You know.
If he makes a mistake,
yeah,
you've got problems.
Exactly.
With us. If we make a mistake, we got another piece of wood.
It's a piece of wood you're working with.
There we go. So something nice and simple.
Even.
Let's see, we've got a question, have we? I've received a rather unusual anniversary gift from my husband. Oh, he bought you a mini lit. Very nice too. There we are. Going to be doing some wood turning. Fantastic. Oh, there's so many different things that you can do. That's one thing that we've never really done a lot of, and that's the wood turning. But it's a lovely process. We've done some. We do have a lathe here on site, but it doesn't get a lot of use, does it?
No. On the point of relaxing and this it's a therapy then.
Well, at different times, we have done a number of projects with occupational therapies and things like that. And they've always said how it's proved a fantastic medium working in woods, because you're concentrating on that and you're focused on that as opposed to thinking of anything else, basically.
Yeah.
And so I remember last year when I did some carving with my wife, I can see her now, she'd start carving and she'd very much get absorbed and concentrating on what she was doing, basically.
Yeah.
Right, so you can see we're working on that bowl again. And you'll see, I picked the gouge very high. And the reason for that, I'm finding that cutting angle. So quite often, again, when somebody starts out, you'll see them sort of skimming over the top, or the opposite, where they're cutting too far into the woods. And so that's a big part of the process when you start learning wood carving, is being able to find the cutting angle. One comment that we get a lot from people is they say how easy it looks when we're cutting the wood. And that's a lot of it is because we're spending time doing the wood carving, and so we know where that cutting angle is. We know how to find it. And so whatever tools you've got, finding that cutting angle, it does make a big difference. There we go.
Yeah, that's right. I understand about the emotional state while carving. Sometimes I sit down to carve and then just really do not feel like carving, so I just stop.
Yeah.
It's right.
Absolutely.
And the other one is a comment from a calligrapher.
Yeah?
And we'll be making calligraphy pens.
Oh, fantastic.
That's another angle. It's so...
That's the nice thing with wood. There's so many different things that you can do. It's a lovely process. Do you want to send in those two designs? And that's the other thing. It's great to be able to get other people involved.
Are there any names on there, are there? Is the thing?
I'm not sure that there is.
Name on the back of this one, so you're okay.
I will leave this. Let's have a little look. Is it this one or this one? We're just double checking them here.
I'm doing the two, say.
Yeah, these two, I mean, there's some nice sort of symbols. They've thought about the school and when it was founded and things like that. What I like about that design, they got lovely symmetry. They got a traditional symbol in there. And this is the nice thing with doing the Lovespoon. There's so much for a school then that you can teach and for others to learn.
Exactly, and you on that one that we shown there before you go to that one, it was chosen to represent their logo.
Yeah.
I chose a heart because we love our school.
Yeah.
There's the date that the school opened. A wheel because we all work together in school to achieve the best we can. So you can see how they're thinking about it.
That's why it's a great project and a great subject. That's the other one then. That's the other design that we've got there. And they've got a little bit on the environment there. So you've got the planting forests in Wales.
The nice thing about this one is because pretty forest in Wales. Yeah. Now you'll notice there's a fir tree on there.
Yeah.
So we're going to get the school, because we take this to them, they're going to get a lot of mileage out of that, because back 70, say 60 years ago, they started planting in Wales
fir trees.
Fir trees. Well, of course, next thing,
there was talk of acid rain.
It was acid rain then, you see, and so
Well, what I liked about this design...
You can see the mileage that we're going to get out of that
absolutely. What I liked about this design, we got the M representing their school. So that was that's on their, like, their logo. But it's that symmetry. As you said, you got the tree, and then you got a twist in the... What I liked about this, it had a simplicity, but they'd thought about all the different elements, even a little bit just to hang the Lovespoon itself. So I thought that one there really struck a chord with me. I could see how we could turn that into
if you leave
a
that
really
drawing
nice
down
design.
there, you know how old the child was?
I think that was a child that was maybe 6 years old.
Yeah.
And so
6
very
or 7
good,
years old.
very good effort, that one there. That, for me, out of all of them, really jumped out. I think they did a fantastic job.
When you think of those drawings, the oldest child would be, 10, I would think.
Yeah. So you can see we're going on to this one here. Now we're doing a little bit of work in the bowl initially. And
that's the finished drawing.
we're going to show again how...
To show that, all right?
We're going to show how... is there another...
Do
you want to check on that one there? We're going to show a different wood. And we're going to show a different symbol. But again, it's always using these fundamental principles. If you're...
Carver, hello gentlemen, touching base from Virginia before we are all called back.
Hello there. Glad to have you all with us. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, it's that's the place to be for wood carvers, is it?
I bet.
Virginia. There we are. You'll have to let us all know with that. There seems to be plenty of wood carvers in Virginia. The place to be.
By the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia.
Well, we got Thomas the Woodcarver singing now.
And the trail of the lonesome pine. That's the one, isn't it?
You've lost me now, but it sounds right.
That's Laurel and Hardy.
There we are. Well, it's just interesting.
Like
We've got.
Hardy, I suppose.
I suppose there is a resemblance. Let's have a little look. I'm thinking of something simple to demonstrate, but again, using those simple principles of carving. Here we go. I got it. Something that we have here in Wales. We'll use the Prince of Wales feathers. So just something that we haven't carved we do carve it occasionally, but not as much as we used to. Excuse me. But again, we start off with those simple stop cuts. So we're cutting down into the woods, just like so. So you measure it out again, angle it over, a couple of taps on the top. So all the time you're keeping things nice and simple, but it's those basic fundamentals that show us to do our carving. Yeah, you carry on. We got a small spoon there to sort out, so Thomas the Woodcarver is going to go and do that. So again, find that angle that you want, find the shape that you want, angle it over, a couple of taps on the top. Same again, measure it out, angle it over, and then angle it over, both. And we've worked, see, we start in the center and then we work in both directions. The idea is, as much as possible, you're trying to get that symmetry. So you're trying to get it nicely balanced and get the symmetry in what you're doing. So again, stop cuts. And then stop cuts, measure it out, and stop cut again. So that gives us the top of our feathers. And then it's again those stop cuts. So you angle the gouge just like so. You've got to be careful, not too hard with your stop cut, because we're cutting, that's the direction that the grain is running in. So it's easier to actually split it. Now I've just noticed, is it on the other side of the bench? No, it's not. So I'm missing a gouge. Oh, I can see it. It's under all of my tools here. That's the one I want. So what we do, we use that one just to mark the bottom of the feather. And then working on the other side, just like so. And that's what we do. You get all of those stop cuts to mark out your basic profile of anything, and then the design sort of comes from there. Other methods, as I said, you can actually mark the design onto the wood itself, and that is a method that we use quite often with our bespoke spoons. So when we're carving something that we haven't done before, we leave a paper drawing on. The disadvantage of doing that is cutting paper with the gouges. It does take the edge off a little bit more quickly. However, it does save us time. So it's a bit of a sacrifice that we make to have the assistance of the paper drawing on the design. I just noticed another comment there. I just checked that 2 seconds. I tried to carve sapili last week and had to stop. It was terribly hard, and noticed it was allergic, started sniffing and sneezing suddenly. Yeah, we use sapili. The one thing you'll find with sapili is the grain. It'll go in 2 different directions. So when you put it through the planer, quite often it'll scuff, because regardless of which way you put it through the planer, at some point you're going to be working against the grain. Some of the ones that got reputation for that sort of thing, we have a timber through called Iroko, and a lot of people report having problems with that. Myself, I've never had any problems with it, and I just put it down to the fact that growing up around the workshop and sort of being exposed to dust all the time didn't seem to have as much effect. But yeah, you definitely get different people with allergies. A friend of mine, he has a lot of allergies, and yeah, certain things he gets more affected by the pollens. So you see, but yes, sapili, it's a nice enough wood to work in, but you do have that different grain in it where it will run in 2 directions. We sort of, I'm afraid we do, whilst it is a slightly different tree, we tend to lump it in with the mahoganies, and there are certain mahoganies that do carve backwards, that sort of thing. So you'll see we're just building up, we're using the stop cuts, and this is where we sort of give the detail to our carving. And it's ultimately that everything that we do, because it's based on simple principles, doesn't matter what carving you do, you keep those fundamentals solid, sound. And if you can keep those fundamentals solid and sound, then it makes everything relatively straightforward. And hopefully it'll help you to have the success with your wood carving projects. So what I do then, we just mark a line down the middle. So another stop cut. And just extend that just to bring it out a little bit further. And the same on the other side. And all we've done, see, we started off with this circle, and then we've just built up a number of stop cuts in and around it, trying to keep everything nice and even, nice and symmetrical. And you build up that design in and around those stop cuts. So let's just look, we need that one there. That is going to be used to do a line down the middle, just like so. You'll have to excuse the telephone in the background. There we go. So a line straight down the middle, just like so. So that gives us those 3 lines that are going to make up the bottom half of our feathers. With this one then, we do a few little lines, and it's just using simple principles to create the effect. Simple, effective carvings. Nothing complicated, but these are the principles that underpin all of the work that we do. This one here, as I mentioned, is a piece of apple, so a piece of fruit wood. And it's nice to work in different woods. They have different finishes, different colours, different characters in the grain. So turning it round the other side, and it's just adding little bits of detail, adding extra interest to the carving as we go. With this one, you'll notice we're working with like a skewered type gouge. You'll see these being used in all sorts of different ways, but we tend to use it almost like a sort of spiking motion on this. And again, what you can do is to just play around with the tools that you've got, try using them in different ways and see what works for yourself. There we are. So we got a lot of the profile done. We then turn it around in the vise and we're going to take a little bit out of the stop cut at the top. The idea though, hopefully through all of this, it gives you an idea that nothing that we do when it comes to wood carving, there's nothing too complicated to it. It is all based on getting those fundamentals right, using your tools correctly, working with the wood as effectively as possible. And the last little part to this design, we're going to do the top of the feathers. So we do a few simple little lines. This one here, as mentioned, it's the Prince of Wales feathers, or an impression of it. And a couple of years back, there was a bit of controversy with it because they had, I think it was St. James's Palace, started telling the jewellers that they'd have to have permission to use it. But that went quiet. Ourselves, because we don't do the exact feathers, we do different interpretations of it. Nothing's ever been said about it. So you've got those lines there like so. And we're just going to finish them off with a few extra little bits of detail. So again, stop cuts down into the woods. And this one here, one of my favourite gouges, really nicely made. So a few little lines across. And then we'll use these stop cuts to add a little bit of extra detail to our feathers. So turning it round in the vise again and cutting into the edge of that stop cut. 1, 2, 3 and 4. And just a lovely process. Hopefully you'll be able to just relax and enjoy the carving that you do. So there you go, all of that, simple little carvings like that, all just building it up using various stop cuts, and then using those stop cuts and adding little bits of detail. Nothing too complicated when it comes to wood carving. Now then, what I'm going to do to finish off, we were talking about it midweek. I spoke to on Instagram to Carver, and we mentioned about our spoons, our family collection of love spoons. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to reposition the camera, and we're going to show you, here we are. Hopefully this will give you an idea. There we are. Now, those are just some of our spoons that we've got in our family collection. I'll come back around the front now, including that one at the top there. So, just sort of elaborating on what we're doing then. There we are. Hopefully that's okay. Just noticing there. I hope the camera's okay. Right, yeah. So these are our family collection of spoons, and what we do and what we try to put into the work that we do is to add messages, to add stories. So all of these, they have different stories. This one here, a good example. So the theme for this one, it was based on imagine the power of love. So very appropriate for a love spoon, and it was done back in 2018, and it took inspiration from, it was the Bishop Michael Curry, and it was his address at the royal wedding. So we thought that his address was very appropriate and very fitting to add to our Lovespoon. You've got twists on there and it represents binding and growing together. Now the reason that I'm sharing, and I'll share just a few of these, is to show you how you can put messages and stories into your work. And if whatever woodworking you're doing, if you can have a story and a message in what you do, it adds an extra dimension to your work. So with what we were talking about with the children, that's what we were asking them to do. Can they put a story? Can they put a message? I just look in there now. The wood even, Dad's just come in with some wood that he's been cutting. Sometimes we have stories and we have messages even in the wood
There we are.
itself.
If you want to show that, you
Yeah.
can see that
There you
was
go.
an old, well, it was a seat from
It was
a park.
It was a bench.
You can see there's 2 screws underneath there, look, see?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so our something we're going to tell the children as well about recycling.
So yeah, it's all part of the story of the work that you do.
If you show that piece, Dave, you can see then they can see how good that wood is underneath.
Yeah, because it's a park bench, it's been outside and the wood on the outside is quite weathered, so you can see there quite weathered, but then underneath you can see it's nice and clear. But it adds to what you do, and that if you're looking to develop as a woodworker, if you're looking to develop a business, the more interest, the more sort of selling points, the more you can offer through your work, the better. And one like this one, let's have a little look. That one there we are. So that something like that one there, you've got a message and a story.
Yeah, and there's a bit of history there as well.
In a spoon like that one there, and you've got an impression of Christ's hands, 3 seeds inside them.
Yeah.
And the idea, the message is that the 3 children, they're safe in his hands. So it's carved from one single solid block of wood, but your carving has a different dimension because it's not just a wood carving like we've been demonstrating. It has a message and a story.
Yeah, we haven't finished the story on that one.
Okie doke.
Okay.
You explain
There we
further.
are. Where do I go? By here?
Yeah, just stand there and
Okay.
you're talking into
So,
the
why?
lens.
Are we there, folks?
Midnight
Can you see me?
Joker.
Can you see
Nice.
me from there?
Good to have you with us. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, you can see fine there.
Now, Dave mentioned a representation of the hands of Christ. So why? Well, you've got a little beetle there. Because sadly, 1980, that's when the spoon was made, John Lennon, one of the Beatles, was murdered. And so, hence the connection, because of course, the Beatles, I think John Lennon in particular, I think they were misunderstood really, because he said they were more famous than Christ. And so that's why we linked those 2 stories. But that's what you can do with your Lovespoon.
Yeah, and I think with whatever work that you're doing with wood, because it's creative, that's generally what we would do, is we start with an idea. So when we design things, and what we got the children to do, when you're designing something, if they can start with an idea and you can work from there, it gives everything a lot more meaning. So there you go.
A little bit of a drawback with Lovespoons, mine, they do gather dust.
They do. Yeah, there's a fair bit of dust on that
Okay.
one there.
And this one's gathered a bit of dust because it's the one I made when Dave was born. Oh,
A few
boy.
years old now.
All those years ago. And there's actually, it's made from a recycled piece of oak. And so there are 4 arrows carved inside that quiver shape. There's about 100 hours work on that one. And of course, why the arrows? Well, one of the quotes, of course, is that children are like arrows. Happy is a man that has his quiver full. So there's Dave's Lovespoon. And
You've
goes
got
back
to
a few
show,
years.
as this woodworkers and wood carvers, you've got to share that one there. We're going to share a few of the ones, a few of our more, and I got to get that one off the wall there. Excuse me, everybody, as I walk past.
that one there, yeah, it's a complete chain made out of teak. And very simple one really. It was our copper wedding anniversary, so we put 1 penny at the bottom. A bit of a sad story to it really, I suppose. Don't know if I want to do this one really, but I suppose it's relevant. As always, it comes up in the news. Rhodesia is carved on the back. We knew one of the ladies.
Modern day Zimbabwe.
Rhodesia in 1978, of course. One of the Elim Pentecostal missionaries that was murdered out in Rhodesia. Mary Fisher. So we put her initials on the back of the spoon there. So I love spoon to record all sorts of things.
But you've got the continuous chain link as well,
Yeah.
which can represent binding, growing together. So that's what we're trying to get across then, is that it's constantly having messages and stories.
Yeah.
That's a good one for a message and a story there.
Oh boys.
There we are.
As you can see folks, it's a set of keys. And the question, my wife used to teach, and she was always sort of having to do the assemblies in school, and so this one she took to school, and I made this one for her, of course. What is the key to life? Where does the answer lie? Well, you see the space shuttle Challenger that exploded, of course. Well, is that where the answer to everything lies? Is it in space? So you've got space travel. Is it your love spoon maybe? Is that the key to life? Carving love spoons. Is that the key to life? Is it money? Is that the key to life? We put an A and an S on there because Andrew and Sarah Ferguson were married, and so sadly we put them, I don't know whether they were married that year, but we put that on there. But is money the key to life? Stardom, being famous. Oh boys, being famous, Dave, no chance, eh? Is that the key to life though? On the back, we put a treble clef. Got music and pop idols. Again, is music the key to life? Maybe for some people. Is it your family, your children? So we carved that on there. And the important one, I always have a look in there. There's a little mirror on there. Not very shiny, I know, but is it self? Is that the key to life? Or is it the cross, of course? And the thing about this spoon is that we're not sort of judging, or we're not saying one is the key.
I got to stop. Cecil Rhodes,
That rings a bell.
founder of Rhodesia.
Yeah.
Midnight Joker, it was his headmaster's grandfather.
Wow. It's such a small world, you see.
Yeah.
Look at that. And the joy of this one is that I'm not sort of judging. You actually have the freedom to choose the key to life. And what we were saying is how fortunate we are in our country to have the freedom to choose the key to life. And that's what that was. Made from a piece of mahogany.
So that's the idea. With this live stream today then, that's the idea. On the back of having a chat midweek with the carver on Instagram, I thought, yeah, we should share some of the other work that we've done, some of the other jobs, because this is what we do, one every year. I mean, you saw this one, any of you who watched any of our live streams last year, where we were showing how we made this one to record lockdown and things like that. But that's what we do. We always try to tell stories. You know, the work that we do, a big part of it is storytelling. So whilst, you may be developing your carving skills, you may have a business, and you may be interested in the wood carving and stuff like that. For us then, mostly it starts with a message and an idea and a story. That's the starting point. And what it also does, in some ways, it takes the pressure off the carving, because we're not worrying as much about, how the carving looks. Whilst it's got to look right, yes, the message is actually more important than anything else. So that simple one there, the message is that you hope love will blossom or continue to blossom. And so that's what we always do. It's the same. Our YouTube channel, why do we start a YouTube channel? It's to share a message, hopefully to encourage others to get involved with wood carving, scroll sawing, to have a go, and to hopefully help others to enjoy woodworking as we do.
Yeah.
And if anyone's looking at that one at the top there, that was That was based on life's journey. And that was the longest hand-carved love spoon in the world and took us 300 hours to do. So it's got a message to portray. And it was showing how you could use a link to make a piece of wood longer. So made from a panel. But if anyone wants us to elaborate,
I think the other important thing is that
we can do so.
It's like a diary.
That's right.
It's just like, you know,
it's our family
I'd be
diary.
hopeless at keeping a diary, but
Yeah.
with a love spoon, you can record things, and then as we are now, we're looking back on the years, and we remember then certain things that happened during that year. So if anybody's into love spoons, that's a nice way to sort of continue and pursue it. Then really is by recording, because then you can practice your carving by finding symbols to represent something.
Now we didn't show this one, so there you go. That's what we've done with the children's designs. So we've done a few different school projects, and what we try to do, we always try to stay as pure then to their designs as possible. We try to, what's the right word? Not pure. We try to keep it as
authentic,
as authentic to what they've envisaged as possible. So you can see all Dad has done with those is to just make them slightly more symmetrical, because that is our style. That's what we tend to do. It's interesting because this one I was thinking slightly differently. So we'll stick with what Dad has done, but I was thinking we would do a twist on the stem. But what you've done a little diamond and then a heart. So perfectly nice way of doing it. And we've got then we're going to have that M at the top there. We got the tree in there. And I've got to admit, that is my personal favourite, because I really appreciated the simplicity of it. It wasn't complicated, it wasn't fussy.
But we've been able to develop that idea with them. We'll recycle a piece of timber.
But I like their messages and story.
We're focusing with the school on the future then.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how important wood is going to be for the future.
There we are. Thank you all again for joining us. Hopefully that's interesting. Something slightly different, I know. But if there's any ideas, if you want us to go over anything as well, feel free to get a message in, and we'll have a look at it. We've got, as always, we'll have our upload for Wednesday. A few different things we've got coming up. I'm just finishing off the editing on the doll's house. We're going through a few of the basics as well. I know Dad wants to do a video showing how you can get started and things like that as well. So hopefully that's all useful. As always, thank you for watching. Thank you for continuing to support our YouTube channel. We really do appreciate it. And we do hope that some of it is useful to you. Hope you all have a good week. And thank you again for joining us.